And we are live. What is up, everybody? Aaron the Dog back with breakdown 2 of 2 for the day. Back with the PFL Challengers Series Week 2, welterweight edition. Way better than Week 1. I'll say that right away. The gathering of the 8 fighters, I think at least 7 of them I would have been fine with if you would have added any of them to possibly the consideration. Maybe not the first 2 and maybe not one other, but other than that. So I think it's pretty high level for the Challenger Series this week, and I expect at least a few of these guys to make their way to the main roster. But yeah, what are your thoughts on Week 1? We did pretty well Week 1. It was a little bit chalky, but still got to pick the chalk to get the chalk.
Yeah, Week 1 was cool. I mean, I would say one complaint, don't at the end when they were like Josh Silveira and who else was it, like step forward, and then they're like celebrating, and then like, yeah, you guys didn't make it, like go home. That just felt like a little cruel, man. They got to find a different way to give out the contracts at the end. But other than that, it was a good show.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's still a little bit awkward phase. Like it's the Dana White Contender Series at home for sure, including it being on Fubo TV, whatever. Everybody's now used up their free trial. Now it's time to decide, do you really love the PFL Challenger Series? I signed up. I paid the money. I enjoyed my free trial last week. I'll pay for this card, though. If they all can be like this, I'll pay for them, honestly. I'm pretty excited about this. I think there's at least 2 guys who end up getting a contract from these 4 fights. So we'll see. But, yeah, welterweights here. Went 1-0. Armchair saying 1-0, had half a unit on a plus 300 3-leg parlay. Well done. Yeah, I got the four piece, even though it wasn't paying that well. I decided to do it, so worked out for me. But yeah, we're gonna get started. This is welterweight, all welterweights, and really, really solid start here. Even though it's between 2 guys with lower records, they are teammates, so that's something that is definitely going to be interesting to kind of focus on as a little bit of an X factor. But Chris Mixon taking on Nathan 2 Bills Pierce here. This is going to be a good fight. I'm really excited for this, especially knowing these guys train together. They also just have very kind of different approaches to how they fight, and it's, I think, really a big part of this. First of all, Nathan Pierce making his welterweight debut. So he's only 29 years old. He looks like when you look at him, you look like him, and he's like, oh man, is this like a 38-year-old like plumber or something? But no, he's just one of those 29 Eddie Team Bananas. Yeah, the Team Bananas would be Chris Mixon in this spot. Chris Mixon, a Fight Bananas favorite for sure. But Nathan 2 Bill Pierce, as I said, 29 going on 39. I don't got a problem with that. He at middleweight definitely had a lot of extra weight he was carrying around. Definitely can see where the pounds are coming off here. So I am interested to see how he looks in that condition, if that maybe causes him to be taking his nutrition and fitness more seriously leading up to it because he had to make this weight now, and that maybe has a benefit on him. But he goes forward and throws just wicked leg kicks. They really have a good effect. I mean, mix it with the boxing. In a few of his fights, they were like, why is he not going for the takedown? Like, that's where he should be taking this fight. He tends to like to stand. He tends to like to, according to one of his teammates who was announcing one of his fights, he said he kind of fights with a chip on his shoulder, likes to prove people wrong a lot of the time, and everything like that. So, I like all of these kind of things on Nathan Pierce, except like he needs to use his wrestling in this spot, because if he's just mixing up on the feet with Chris Mixon, I think Mixon's going to be much faster, much more powerful. And, I mean, the thing for Mixon is he's got to avoid putting too much weight on that front leg that he sometimes does, because Pierce is going to be throwing those leg kicks. But Pierce isn't showing he goes to that wrestling enough for me in this spot. And I am concerned with how the 170 looks on him. He's coming off a win of Bronco Busick. We all know Bronco, or we should. Corey Holbrook, though, was a guy who had a really good stand-up game coming into that fight. It was both their debuts, but he knocked him out in the first round. Looked really good in that one. Gabriel Mota, another guy, albeit he was 4-4, clearly was a stand-up fighter, and Nathan did not go to the ground at all in that fight. He just kept it on the feet. and then Mixon, he's coming off a loss with Game Bred MMA. He got knocked out in bare knuckle. You never like to really see that. 2-0 in MMA, however, 8 straight wins going back to his amateur career. 6-1 to the 5-9 of Nathan Pierce. Should be a much longer, quicker fighter here. But, he got taken down against Cedric Johnson quite a bit. Cedric Johnson is known as a pretty bad fighter in the pros. He was 1-3 at the time. And Mixon was able to sneak in a guillotine. But, again, it's just, not exactly what I like to see. I do think that Nathan Pierce has to know, being the teammate, that he's got to go to the wrestling here. So I'm just curious what the teammate X factor does. If they're we're teammates, let's stand and bang, and one of us will earn in, let's prove it. Or if Nathan's going to really go the smart route, which would be going to his wrestling here. I've seen it work against Mixon before. I'm going to lean with Mixon here, just ever so slightly. But I am nervous that Pierce fights this fight the way he's supposed to. But so far in Pierce's entire career, he has not done that. So, I think he's going to just stand and trade with Mixon, and I think that will be an error.
Yeah, Mixon, 8 fights total in MMA, 8-0, 100% finish rate across the pro and amateur career. Like you mentioned, he was finished in the first round in that bare knuckle MMA fight on Game Bred. Most recently was in the boxing ring and won a decision in that one back in November. Seems to be a decent striker. The hands can be a little bit low at times. I've seen him get dropped when he's being a bit lax on defense. But pretty good combinations when he starts flowing, and especially when I was watching some of his amateur fights, there were some nice extended striking exchanges that I thought he looked good in. He seems to have a pretty decent guard as well on the ground. He was able to get that come from behind win in his pro debut. After he got dropped by punches, he got the submission. But we haven't really seen him in too many high level grappling situations, so it's kind of hard to gauge how good that really is, especially like you mentioned, the wrestling. Pierce is a pretty good wrestler, so maybe that could be some of an X factor. But I really agree with you there when you're saying you think he's going to be a little quicker. He's got some athletic advantages. I think he's going to be a little faster, and also the size. I don't mind that advantage either. Pierce is a 3-1 pro, but he was 9-8 as an amateur and was finished in 7 of the 8 losses there, 6 times by knockout. Has that Anaconda win over Bronco Busick as a pro, so that's it's a pretty decent win, especially within the context of this matchup, I think. And we've seen him utilize the leg kicks quite a bit, and he kind of excels in kind of a more grindy, dirtier fight. And I think there's a possibility that we see that here. He's a good jiu-jitsu player, a serviceable wrestler. This is going to be a pass for me, betting wise. I think it could be a little sloppy, and it was short notice, for both guys. Like you mentioned, they're teammates, so kind of a lot of question marks here. Kind of hard to tell what we're going to get. I don't have the best read here, but I am going to lead towards Mixon to get the job done in the opener.
Yeah, minus 225 on Chris Mixon. I was quite surprised it was that steep. And I'm just going to have to leave it alone, honestly. I really do think Nathan Pierce, even if it's just on the feet, he keeps these fights really close. He stays in your face in those. He just throws constant leg kicks, constant leg kicks in all of his fights. And it's just, there's a lot of X factors here. Minus 225 on a 2-0 fighter coming off of a bare knuckle MMA KO loss. No, thank you. Just going to pass on it, but Chris would be my pick as well. I really think it's a good fight, though. Don't, judge it at 2-0, 3-1. But from there on, we just take off into another level here. This fight is outstanding to me. I really, really liked what I saw of Carlos Lilly in his last performances, which I say performances because he won twice in one night in the LFA Welterweight Grand Prix. And legitimate, looked like a destroyer in there. Carlos Lilly has fought anywhere from, I believe, featherweight up to light heavyweight. He's another one of those Brazilians who's fought all over the place. Now is settled in right in the middle at welterweight. He looked like really, really looked good in his last couple of performances, obviously. Now he only has to fight once tonight. 29 years old, 5'11", 74.5-inch reach for the Thai Brazil product. The Lion taking on the Sound of Chaos, Socrates, Pierre, the 36-year-old out of Florida, 6 foot tall. So very good experience for both these guys, 12-6 here, 2 straight wins for Socrates. He is 36 years old, but looking to be in good shape. Makes 170 no problem, fought at middleweight. He's actually talked about going down to lightweight, which is a little bit of a concern for me here. Yeah, for sure. If he's starting to think that, I just wonder where he's at. But fought last with Icon in March of last year, got Darce choke finish in the third round of a 6-2 Harris Stevenson, submitted Greg Ellis prior to that. But a little bit of some concerns here. He's been submitted or KO'd, mostly submitted in all of his fights. Got submitted by Tyler Hill. Like, yikes. Preston Parsons, not the worst loss. Preston Parsons has a lot of submissions on the regional scene, especially. He got submitted by Brock Weaver, Elvin Brito. I mean, he's getting submitted by anybody. It just seems like once he's pressed in the grappling, he tends to make some mistakes, even though he himself is a grappler. Eddie's saying he trained at Fusion for part of this camp. Interested to see the difference. He's definitely a very athletic guy, for sure. His stand-up's okay. Definitely his offensive grappling, really impressive. But defensively, I have some doubts about him on both sides. And Carlos Leo coming into this fight with a ton of momentum. Obviously, coming off the LFA welterweight Grand Prix there. Looked really good, but 8 straight wins for him. The Lion last in July, where he got those 2 wins, the right cross win, and then really solid decision over Uriah Carlos because Gabriel Bonfim was unable to continue. Carlos had lost earlier in the night, so there is that to be noted with that second win. But overall, just good jiu-jitsu, good stand-up. He comes forward very aggressive, great shape. I don't recognize a ton of the wins on his record, but I mean, from what I saw of those last 2, I think he comes in here and just kind of overwhelms Socrates. I really like Carlos Leo Miranda, as he's known, or Carlos Leo, to kind of take this fight wherever he wants it. And I think he gets some sort of a finish. I'm not sure, submission or KO, but I like the finish for Carlos.
Yeah, Carlos Leal, LFA welterweight champ, won the Grand Prix, LFA 112, 2 wins in one night, went home with the belt. So real good night for him. He hasn't had a loss since 2014. He's on an 8-fight winning streak with 5 finishes over that span. And yeah, he's aggressive on the feet. He likes to come forward. He likes to pressure. He's got accurate shots on the feet. Had a really nice walk-off knockout in the first of those 2 fights on LFA 112 with the straight right. That was a nice knockout there, and has some good Muay Thai in his back pocket. Decent teep kicks that he uses to keep the range. And he's solid defensively in the grappling. He also is pretty good offensively with it too. He has some good trip takedowns, and he also has a pretty good top game when he does get to the ground. And I think he's going to be the more athletic, the quicker on his feet, the faster fighter in there against Socrates Pierre, who's 36 years old now, is coming in on a small win streak of 2 wins. He's 12-6 as a pro. He has a win over Michael Lilly that we'll talk about later. 2 fights with former UFC fighter Brock Weaver. He went 1-1 in those. And one of those that he won, he actually became the lightweight champ in Island fights. But I mean, that was a really long time ago now. That was in 2014. His 2 most recent losses, Preston Parsons, Tyler Hill, seeing them in UFC and PFL respectively. So decent level of competition, but he's not picking up many wins against that next step up. He will have, I think, a half-inch reach advantage here. And, he has pretty decent grappling. We've seen some good wrestling out of him, some good top control, but he just looks a step slow to me right now at 36. I just don't know if, just put the technical stuff to the side. I don't know if he can just really keep up with a really athletic kind of younger guy like Carlos Leal at this point. Leal, like you said, he looked really explosive in his last LFA fights. I think he's going to look faster, and I think he's going to be the better fighter wherever this one goes. So I really like Carlos Leal to get the job done here.
Yeah, and if I had to predict, I think the winner of this fight, especially if it being Carlos, gets a contract. Minus 325, I like that as a parlayable piece for sure, plus 250 on Socrates. I think that I like Leo in this one, and at that price, I'll parlay him. So moving on to the next fight, third from the co-main event, I should say. Really, really good fight. Easily, I could see this taking place on an LFA main event. Instead, we get it in the Challenger Series here. Mark Martin, a guy we're both very familiar with, of Ohio State, the wrestler, taking on Delano Taylor, the postman. This is a really good fight, and definitely a tough test for Mark Martin. Very, very tough test for Mark Martin. I will say that right off the bat. The MMA Lab representative, 6 foot, 74-inch reach. You know, it hardly even matters, though, because he doesn't really use his reach. He's just looking to wrestle for the most part in these fights. Very much the stand-up is to set up the wrestling. Still only 20, is it 28 or 26? Sorry. Still only 28 years old. Again, MMA Lab. He's gotten 6 straight wins since a split loss in the second fight. The last couple, though, the Natto Valente fight, you did see quite a bit of kind of the limitations in his game in that one. Really just started spamming takedowns. And really, it's what you've seen the last couple fights with him. Matthew Colquhoun, a guy who he was able to get down at will, but wasn't really able to do anything with the positions he was in. And that was a little concerning also. And then the last 2, he's really just gone to resorting to spamming and overextending on takedowns. And it's worked to get these done. But I think has a lot to do with the level of competition. And Natto Valente was making his welterweight debut, and then he faced Eric Montano at 8-6 on Combate Global. Still didn't really look that well. A little bit curious as to his overall confidence in his MMA game. I think that it's a little bit lacking on the feet. He just throws a lot of single shots. It's not they're not exactly impressive either. And I just think in this one, he's going to go with the same game plan he's been going with for the last few. It's just takedown, takedown, takedown. Hopefully it works. I don't think it's going to work here against Delano Taylor. I think Delano Taylor is the real deal. Both these guys are 7-1, so both deserve to be here. Very good. But Delano Taylor, 7-1's 25 years old still. 6 foot like his opponent, both on 6-fight win streaks. He's gone by route of Titan FC for the most part, has some submission wins, went to a split decision with Marcus Edwards in his most recent fight. That was definitely a fight that I expected him to look much better in. Carlos Matos, that was a really good fight and on Carlos Matos' home turf in Puerto Rico. And, he was able to deal with a tough crowd and a really confident 8-0 fighter, mix it up really well. Sharp stand-up. No worries, Norton. Good to see you, man. Across the pond over in England. Good evening. I like Delano Taylor quite a bit in this spot. Had the quick finish of Michael Lilly that we got to see with Titan. Michael Lilly fighting in the main event here. So 2 or 3 guys have wins over the guy in the main event. The Luis Gonzalez fight I actually was quite impressed with, even though Luis Gonzalez was coming off of quite a long layoff. He seemed to come in really sharp. So I just think that Delano Taylor knows what he needs to prepare for here, and it's just spamming of takedowns. I think the takedowns become less effective as the fight goes. I think Mark Martin will gas at some point. I don't know if Delano gets a finish or not, but I like Delano Taylor in this spot. Delano needs to prepare for one thing, and I just don't see Mark Martin taking those, making those evolutions yet. Until he does, I can't really make those predictions. So, like Delano Taylor, I guess I'd say by decision.
Yeah, Taylor, the Titan FC welterweight champ, Stanford MMA guy, on a 6-fight win streak right now. So is Mark Martin. He's nice and long with that 77.5-inch reach. That should give him a 3.5-inch cushion on Martin. And it's just difficult to close the distance on Delano Taylor because of that. And he has very good distance control. He knows where he needs to be, and he's able to stifle a lot of prospective offense just by having good footwork and being in the right place. He has a very good ground game as well. He's a brown belt in jiu-jitsu. He also coaches jiu-jitsu, or at least he used to. I don't know if he's moving more towards full-time fighting or not, but I know he definitely used to do that. He's a big guy, and he's got solid wrestling. Was a wrestler back in high school. I mean, Mark Martin is definitely going to be ready to meet that challenge if Taylor wants to wrestle. Mm-hmm. He's got an identical record of 7-1, had a nice little 3-0 stint on LFA. A good win over Renato Valente. I mean, that's a tough opponent. I think we both would have liked to see him be a little more dominant in that win, but that's a tough opponent nonetheless. Fights out of the southpaw stance, so good kicks to the liver. He's a decent striker. I don't know how much success he's going to be able to have on the feet against Delano Taylor. I mean, he does like to fake the level change a lot. I don't know if Taylor's going to be as, scared of the wrestling as a lot of his other opponents will, just because he is really good on the ground. But Martin wrestled at Ohio State. I think he is the better pure wrestler of the two, but I think Taylor's at least going to be able to keep that competitive. And I think that he's going to be the much better jiu-jitsu player. So I think Taylor will be the better striker, a little more volume, a little bit better range control. I think that Taylor also is going to have the advantage in the jiu-jitsu. I think that obviously we're going to give Martin the wrestling, but I just don't know if that alone is going to be enough. I think that Delano Taylor's just a little bit more complete at this point in his career, so I'm going to pick him to get the win here.
Yeah, I agree. Minus 210. I don't hate the price at all. I think that it's a pretty good price. I'd pair him up with Leo for a little middle parlay, perhaps to get the close to even. But I like Delano as well in this for many of the same reasons you said. Kind of a weird main event. I don't know if there is a main event, but the top fight on the card, I will describe it as here, and of course it is at welterweight, and that is between Jarrah Hussein El Sawawi. I'll just say Jarrah from here on out, taking on Michael Lilly, who we've mentioned a couple times. Unfortunately, those have been in losses. He is 7-6, 32, nearly 33 years old. He's out of MMA Masters, fighting out of Miami. But he's really been able to turn it around. Had a lot of his losses in the middle of his career. Taking on the 16-3 Jarrah Hussein Al Sawawi, or the Jordanian Lion. But Michael Lilly, we'll talk about first, 7-6. We talked about several of those losses on this channel, or during this breakdown, I should say, already. Coming off a loss to Delano Taylor, got rear naked choked in a minute 30 in that fight. Delano Taylor was 2-1 at the time. It was in September of 2020. Other than that, he had come off a 4-fight win streak prior to that, 3 decisions and a knockout of Kent Lee St. Louis. Again, the other guys hadn't really heard too much about. He had the loss to Nico Price back in the day, had a loss to Socrates, Pierre, Jason Jackson. So most of his losses coming to pretty solid opponents. Doesn't have a real marquee win. He comes forward, likes to set up the boxing to get it into kind of a gritty grappling fight, usually where he can use his submissions, use his grappling just overall. And Jarrah is pretty different in his approach, so it is kind of a difference of styles here. But Jarrah Hussein is 16-3 at this point in his career, very solid, 29 years old. 3 straight wins for him. Last fought with Bellator back in April, or Brave, I'm sorry, back in April. Actually, has fought quite a bit with Brave. Beat guys like Carlston Harris, knocked him out. Beat a 10-0 Abdul Abergimov, knocked him out in the 4th round. Ismail Nardiev in his last fight ended him with leg kicks. And Ismail since then has gone on to win his next fight. So, a lot of solid wins. Carl Booth, Daniel Scatizzi. I mean, he's been tested throughout his career, spent a lot of time with Brave, now making, I believe, his U.S. debut, if I'm not mistaken. So that's definitely an issue or a side of this I'm curious to see. But, I mean, he's beat the who's who. He's faced a really high level of competition, still 29 years old. Michael Lilly has one way and one way only of winning this fight. It's making it dirty, staying attached to him, getting the wrestling going, and getting Jarrah to have his back to the mat, because that is where Jarrah, I think, could have some issues. But otherwise, I think Jarrah just kind of takes this one. He's been more than ready for this step up in this opportunity, and I think a lot more people need to know who Jarrah Hussein Al Sawawi is, so I can say his name better. But I like Jarrah in this spot. You're muted.
My bad. There we go.
No worries.
He's the welterweight and super welterweight champ in Brave right now. And, man, he's got some extremely impressive wins over there, including Carlston Harris. 16-3 record. I feel like this guy is a pretty polished prospect to be on the Challenger Series. I think he honestly could jump right into the main PFL regular season. He's got good output on the feet. I mean, he's got good kicks to the body, good kicks to the legs as well. He stopped Ismail Nardiev on leg kicks in just over 6 minutes in his last fight. It's pretty impressive. I mean, this guy's knocked out Carlston Harris in the 1st round. He's got a strong clinch game, has some throws, some trips that he looks for against the cage. He's good with the wrestling on both sides, offense and defense. And he's got a good top game as well. His ground and pound he likes to do damage from that top position, does a good job of keeping his head high in the scrambles and keeping that dominant position. And the cardio is also very good. He's gone into deep waters a lot. He's a double champ. He's had plenty of 5-round fights. He's a well-conditioned guy. And for some reason, he's coming in here against Michael Lilly. I mean, a 7-6 fighter that's 32. He's fought a couple of guys on this card and lost to them. He's also had fights against Nico Price, Jason Jackson. Like, there's impressive names on the resume, but just within the context
none
of
of them with
matchup,
wins.
Yeah, there's not that many impressive wins. I mean, like, we're looking at Salawi, and like he's got wins over Carlston Harris, and like Nardiev, like UFC guys, and like good wins, like putting the finish in them. Yeah. And I think that Salawi is just going to be better anywhere this fight goes, to be honest. I think that it's a real possibility that he could be the best prospect that we see on the Challenger Series this year, in my opinion. This was the easiest pick on the card for me. Yeah.
I mean, in the price speaks for it. Minus 550 plus 400 on Michael Lilly. Not surprised there at all. Yeah, I agree with you. Jarrah is a real deal. They didn't need to do this. It would, I'm not rooting against Michael Lilly in any way. I respect him, but it would almost be a shame if Jarrah kind of slips up in this spot and like this loses like a gritty like decision or something to Lilly. If he really not, But either way, I honestly think the winner of the final 3 fights is going to get a contract. I think all 3 of these guys are worthy of getting in there. I would have to look at the rest of the welterweight roster, I guess, to really fully make that. But yeah, Jarrah all day. Yeah, definitely weird matchmaking. Norton, I agree with you 100% here. Jarrah is, I guess it's just maybe he wanted to know what it was like fighting on U.S. soil. I don't know. But either way, we agree on all 4 of those fights. So Chris Mixon for both of us, Carlos Leal, Delano Taylor, and Jarrah. Those are also known as all the favorites, but sometimes that's how it lines up. You got to make the picks that you make. It can't just change it and, go. If I would say that my most live dog on the card would be Pierce in the first fight, though. I do think at plus 170, it's not a terrible stab with how he fights and them being teammates and everything. So other than that, yeah, I think it's going to be a little chalky. Check out the LFA 125 breakdown. We just did it before this on the channel. Check out Lucky Locks picks. You've got the LFA and Challenger up already, or are you still?
Yeah, they're both up.
Okay, yeah. So definitely go over to Lucky Locks picks. Subscribe over there if you are not already. I always listen to those videos right as I'm making my picks. They're much more succinct than these, but I think both together give you kind of a full picture of these fights. So that's why we do them. But that will do it. That is the final breakdown of the week for the Aaron the Dog MMA channel. We got the UFC breakdown on the channel already. Got Bellator Dublin with our boy Lewis on the channel already. Norton, appreciate the love. Then we've got the LFA 125 breakdown and now the PFL Challenger Series that you're watching right now. Timestamps included in all of them. And then next week we got the UFC 272 pay-per-view to break down with Boston Commons herself. So we'll be back with that as well as the rest of the slate of MMA next week. It was almost on a breakdown until I see my boy Visceral show up. But yeah, you did show up. I'm glad you were here, Visceral. Go check out the LFA video. It's on the channel. But thank you, everybody. Have a great day and enjoy the fights this weekend. Peace out.